All right, everybody, welcome to the Mike Lead Aspires session today, this Friday. We're excited to have on the mic with us, Spandana, and I said I wasn't going to try to butcher the last name, so I'm going to let her introduce herself. But of course, if you're out there watching on our YouTube channel, please like and actually follow our channel, like and hit the little bell so you can get notifications for when we go live. Again, it's nonprofit. We're attempting to really monetize our channel. We have a lot of content out there. We have a lot of great conversations with individuals like our current guest from Adobe, and we're just going to get started. So I ask everybody the same question when we come on this when we have these conversation, and it's not only tell us your name, but tell us your origin story and what exactly that do you do for Adobe and how did you get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Spandana Gorantla. I am currently working as a product security engineer at Adobe. So my team is responsible for conducting security reviews and threat modeling for any new Adobe products or features. And usually the security reviews are architecture reviews, threat model reviews, code reviews, and occasional pen testing and stuff like that. It's been 4 to 5 months since I joined Adobe, and it's been a fun ride so far. But yeah, if I have to give you my origin story, we'll probably have to go back to 2012 to 2016 period of time. So I'm originally from India. I was born and brought up in India, so I did my bachelor's in India as well. So my bachelor's was actually in electronics and communications. It was on the engineering side, but it was not on the software side of things. It was on the hardware side of things, and I absolutely hated it. So I wanted to change my stream. So I was just exposed to like a little bit of software here and there. For example, like C language, a very high level understanding of what it is, how to code and stuff like that, syntax and basic stuff. And I was kind of looking to switch streams, and I was in my final year. And it's actually a very interesting story how I got into security because we had a lot of companies on campus for recruitment and stuff like that. And one of them was Deloitte. So they were actually looking for two roles. One is cybersecurity, and one was in data analytics. They were hiring multiple people, but it was those two roles they had. And for some reason, cybersecurity seemed too complex, too technical. I was so intimidated just hearing its name. So I thought, okay, data analytics makes more sense because it's just, it's easy to understand what it is about, at least to some extent, just by hearing its name. I absolutely had no idea what either of those, anyways. So I thought, okay, let me just apply for data analytics. So I applied for data analytics. And we had these written exams and everything. And once I passed all of it, that's when the actual interview process began. And the first round, as part of that interview process, is a group discussion. So essentially, there's going to be a group of students, and they're going to give a topic to those students, and we just have to discuss it among them ourselves. And then at the end of it, they're going to tell us if we are moving forward or not, and stuff like that. So for that day, the topic was software development lifecycle, and a lot of the students were from computer science. So they already had an understanding of what software development lifecycle is and stuff like that. And I was sitting there having no idea, just a very high level idea of what it is. And it was essentially like there is this idea, we want to develop that into a product and launch it. So essentially the discussion was that. And everybody started talking about, the idea, the design, the architecture, what type of components we want to use, the coding, languages, pros and cons. And I was just sitting there listening to all of that because I didn't have much to contribute since I was from hardware background. But at some point, they were like, okay, now we have to talk about the actual like deployment into production stuff. I don't know how and why I said that, but I was like, you know what, guys, we have to test this as well before deploying into production because, there could be user issues or bugs or whatever it is. We want to make sure that the experience that we are giving the users is actually the experience we want to give them and make sure everything is working as expected and then deploy into production. And I think that part caught the attention of the recruiter who was monitoring the discussion. And post the discussion, he came to me and said, you know what, we actually would like to interview you for cybersecurity role instead of the data analytics role. And he said, if you're not interested, that's fine, we can just call it off. And I was in my final year looking for a job, and I was like, you know what, let me give it a try. So I told the recruiter that I'm not from a technical background, so I don't have a lot of these, a lot of understanding about cybersecurity, these concepts and everything. And he was like, "That's fine. We'll train you as long as you have the right mindset." I'm so grateful to him even today. But what happened afterwards? So I had these multiple interviews where I was asked some technical questions, was very basic, like what is HTTP, difference between HTTP and HTTPS, and stuff like that. So at some point, they asked me to write a pseudocode for a problem since they thought that I obviously didn't have any background. But since I had some exposure to C, I was able to write some code and they loved it. And they said, okay, you're in cybersecurity. I was like, that's awesome. And that's essentially how I began my career. I would say it was almost by a fluke, but I loved it. I think in Deloitte, it was more on the non-technical side of things, like, auditing, anti-money laundering investigations and stuff like that. But at least that was the point when I decided I really want to get into security. And that's how I actually pursued my master's in the US. So I moved to the US in 2018 and I finished my master's. And yeah, that's how I actually started my career. So.
That is amazing. So, okay, let's back out a little bit because I'm fascinated with the group interview concept and fascinated with this thought that they just gave you a topic and then the interviewers were monitoring the conversation to see the thought process. Was
Mhm.
that intimidating for you at all?
A little
Just
bit.
being thrown in the room?
Yeah, definitely. A little bit because Deloitte is a big company. And I don't think
Mhm.
I was that comfortable in English back then because English wasn't like my
Mhm.
native language. And I was like, okay, what about my communication skills? I don't know if I'll be able to effectively, articulate what I was thinking and stuff like that. So I obviously had a lot of concern and it was very intimidating, especially with the fact that it wasn't a hardware discussion because I was in hardware. And it was since it
Mhm.
was more on the technical side, especially with the group full of computer science engineers, it was definitely intimidating. But the best part was, I think somehow I kept calm. I was calm. And then I was just thinking, listening to other people, what they were saying, and just thinking about what else can we do to improve it rather than, because I feel like if now that I think about it, if I actually like, yeah, if I remember correctly, I feel like I think I might have felt that I wouldn't be getting that position anyways, considering all of that. So I was like, you know what else would I lose? So let me just like listen to it, share my thoughts, whatever happens, happens. And I think that really helped. So
Yeah, the relaxing and being able to say, okay, well, I'm not emotionally attached to
exactly.
this particular position. So it's like you could be, no, I was just reminded of the FBI and going into the FBI and the group interview and in the behavioral based interview. So that was really intriguing to me,
Yeah.
to the way you described that. And so backing out, so of course the Aspire sessions are for those that are new to the profession, looking to get into the profession. And you said initially that you felt the word cybersecurity was this big thing,
Yeah.
right? And you not super highly technical, your hardware or hardware geek, not a, and you didn't know. So
Mhm.
what have you learned ultimately? And we'll get to your role in a second, but I love this conversation. What have you learned about cybersecurity in regards to the requirement that you be super highly technical?
Yeah. Back then, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's true to some extent even today. I know there's a lot of like chaos around security, like what certifications, trainings, and all these like jargon that people just like throw around. But to be honest with you, I feel like security is in everybody's life, like even in my mom's life,
Mhm.
my dad's life, like even in your life, my life, not just in terms of our day-to-day responsibility, but when you're actually using a username password to get into your application or your bank banking application. That is security, essentially. So it's kind of there in everybody's lives. I think that's what I started learning, that security is not this whole super technical, complex thing that you have to be intimidated about. It's more of understanding where does it fit in the big picture, and what can you, or how can you contribute, to just make the world more secure. And that doesn't mean that you have to go hack things, or this penetration testing side of things, which just got like so much of this thing from people. But you actually don't have to be a penetration tester or an application security expert to actually get into security. It's for everyone. You could go define policies, you could go look at the compliance, you could go look at privacy. It's more of a thought process than the actual technical stuff, is what I feel. And I think that's what the company had believed in me as well that day, because all I had was just me. I didn't have any knowledge in security, at that time to
Mhm.
offer. So I think it's more of that thought process that you have to develop to get into security. And when you have the right thought process, you're going to succeed no matter what. And I'll tell you why as well, at least in my experience. Because I feel like security is this one field that constantly evolves. Like, whatever, I think the best guidance that you could give your developers or software engineering teams is probably going to be a
Mhm.
bare minimum tomorrow. And day after tomorrow, it's probably going to be outdated. And if you actually follow that, you're vulnerable. So you have to constantly change your beliefs, keep learning, and stuff like that. So I think more than the technical part, I think the mindset is what will get you into security. And that's where you'll actually thrive as well. At least that's my experience. So
Yeah.
that's what I learned.
Well, I'm 30 plus years of experience in the space, and so you're absolutely correct. And that's what I wanted my apprentices, as well as the aspirers and the folks on this call, to hear it from someone else, because I keep beating it in their head, and I
Yeah.
need, I did not prompt her. This is the first time we've actually met, so there we have it. So, as far as you said, you have 4 or 5 months with Adobe. So you went from Deloitte to Adobe, or did you have a stop in between there?
Yeah, I actually changed a lot of companies in between. So,
Okay,
yeah.
let's talk about that. All the
Yeah.
things you've done. Let's see.
Definitely, definitely. So yeah, like I said, I think in Deloitte it was more of a non-technical role I had. So I had to come for my master's, and when I was doing my master's, I was able to get an internship with PwC with all the Deloitte experience I had, because they're both consulting firms. So I interned with them for a couple of months, which kind of helped me get a full time with them. So I joined PwC right after my master's. But again, after going to PwC, that's when there was COVID. So there was not enough projects in security. So I had to explore other fields within PwC as well. For example, for a few months, I was in a disaster recovery project, which was completely different from what like we typically do in security, which was definitely good because I was able to like pick up some breadth in the field. But at the same time, I really wanted to like put all my theoretical skills into practice. And I wanted to do it as soon as possible so that I don't forget. So I again switched. So that's actually a very interesting story. I feel like for some reason, me not coming from a technical background kind of made me think like I'm not going to be a technical person ever. I don't think I can be a technical person ever. Just because I wasn't from a technical background and I was just intimidated a lot by a lot of these technical people around me. And for some reason, my confidence took hit at that point. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'm not a technical person. Maybe I'll have to go pursue some non-technical stuff within security. And that's how I ended up in PwC as well. But when I actually did not like it that much, that's when I was like, you know what, maybe I should put that effort. Maybe it's me, I'm not putting that effort. I'm not putting in those hours. I'm not showing passion towards it. And that's when I sat down and started learning OWASP Top 10, like the basic fundamental in application security. Started watching videos. For example, Cybery has a lot of free videos. That's how I started my career in AppSec. I watched a lot of free videos, tried to understand, tried to talk to other people just to kind of refine my understanding. And that's when I was able to get a junior application security analyst position at Norton LifeLock. And that was amazing to me because I never thought I'd be able to do it. Because I felt like for some reason I kind of saw myself as a non-technical person, absolutely, because just the fact that I was not from that background, which was ridiculous in my opinion. But yeah, so I think the effort that I put in and the realization that I had helped me get into Norton LifeLock as a junior application security analyst, and I think that's when the AppSec things started off. So I worked there for about 1 year, 9 months, spent a little time in the penetration testing side of things. Again, had an amazing manager, amazing team who actually helped me train, who put that time in me for me to develop. And I think just to kind of add something here, that a lot of secure companies who have security teams and everything, especially when we have entry level professionals on the team, they are more than willing to put that effort and time to actually train you. And I think that's the best part, because especially with security, if you look at it, I don't have to tell you this, you might be already seeing this, that in security field we have people from diverse backgrounds. I think security is that one field where we have so many people from diverse backgrounds. Like, for example, one of my friends is from music, and she's nailing it in cybersecurity today. So I think a lot of people know that, and which is why they're willing to spend that time, put in that effort to actually train you. And with all the resources that you have today, it's not that difficult. All you have to do is just show passion towards it. So that's what I did when I was with Norton LifeLock, and that helped me a lot, which actually helped me get a role in Amazon as an application security engineer. And I spent about 1.5 years at Amazon, and the experience was amazing. I think that was the first time when I actually saw that amount of complex, interesting stuff, which kind of boosted my career, because the learning curve was huge and I learned so much at my time there. Um, Adobe approached me, and I loved the role, and I thought, you know what, I can use my Amazon expertise here. And that's how I ended up in Adobe. I know there's a lot of companies involved in the in between, but yeah, that's how I ended up here.
No, no. So no, that's perfectly fine. And so describe your role now. Is it a hybrid of technical, or you said product security? So, not is it an addition of risk and hands-on skills, or what are you, without giving away the secret sauce or anything, without getting you in trouble?
Yeah,
What would you say your role consists of now?
yeah, definitely. Just to kind of help people understand, especially who are new to security and stuff like that. So usually when we have all these, every company has these products, applications, right? When I say products, it's more of a software product. And like, take for example, Adobe has Firefly, Photoshop, and let's say our software engineering team makes a change to Firefly or this new product, and then they want to release it to customers. We want to make sure that whatever we are doing as part of that change is actually secure, and it's not going to make our customers lose trust in us, right? So that's essentially the foundation of it. So to make sure that whatever we're doing is secure enough, we come into picture where we perform security reviews on the change or the product that they're trying to launch. So what we essentially do is we look at the design of that product as to, okay, what are we changing and what are the components involved? For example, APIs or web or, microservices interacting with each other and all that stuff. So we kind of look at the design architecture, and that's when we're going to threat model it. And when I say threat model, yeah, I don't want to use all this jargon, but it's actually pretty simple if you think about it. Like, let's say there's component A interacting with component B, then you just want to understand that the interaction is not vulnerable. There's no security issue that's going to be involved with the interaction. And you try to do that through threat modeling, which is a really important exercise in the software development lifecycle. So essentially, we review the architecture, we threat model, and if we see a need, we also do a code review with any new code that's going in, just taking a look, seeing if any vulnerable functions are being used and stuff like that. And if it seems even more critical, that's when we might do a little bit of penetration testing just to make sure everything is working as expected. And that's when we're going to share our, thoughts with the product team, like the software engineering team, saying, hey, this looks good versus this doesn't look so secure. So maybe we have to change this a little bit. And once all of that is incorporated, that's when the product goes into production. So we kind of tag along with the product teams, but we provide more security expertise recommendations there. So
Sounds great. See, so again, another area, because I like to expose individuals in this group to the broad range of activities that make up cybersecurity. And you have been in the consultant role, which is really risk management, all the way to now you're in the technical code review on the software side. You know, there is a hardware side, there's a privacy side, there's a compliance side. And so to expose individuals to the various aspects that is cybersecurity is what we like to do here. But
yeah.
let's talk about advice, right?
Mhm.
Of course, like I said, these folks are, and what I heard you say earlier was it was just your curiosity and passion that led you down the technical path because that's what you were interested in. What advice would you give someone that is new to the space, that is trying to break into the space, given the change
Mhm.
in the industry, specifically this year has been interesting in of itself. But what advice would you give someone that's trying to break into cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I were to give like one advice for someone who's starting their career in security, I think just like I mentioned earlier, I think just being able to constantly evolve, like change your beliefs, living as a student forever, and changing your beliefs or changing your opinions, learning new things. And the reason being, like I said, it's just a constantly evolving field. Something that you truly believe in and understand today might not be relevant at all tomorrow because these hackers are getting smart. So we need to be able to catch up with them, if not like at least, pass them, right? So I think just the fact that you're willing to learn and you're willing to change your perspective is so critical today. Because, for example, I kind of understood what you're talking about when you said these days it's been interesting, especially with the Gen AI stuff. As we get more new technologies into this world, it's also important to kind of define security for those, because every new technology is going to introduce so many risks, so many security concerns and everything. And you just need one area where we lack security, and that is enough for companies to come down. So it's so critical that we keep up with the technology, but at the same time not compromising on security. So I think really being able to learn, constantly update yourself, changing your beliefs and everything is super critical in cybersecurity. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing I would say is, especially when you're starting your career, don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to admit that you don't know when you don't know something. Because that's what I realized in my career, especially in the beginning of my career, that when you actually admit that you don't know something, there's going to be a ton of people who are going to help you. You're going to get that respect, that because you were honest, you're being honest and you're being genuine, and there's going to be a lot of people giving you resources, giving you that practical advice as to how to learn something when you admit that you don't know it. And I had difficulty with this early in my career, because I was too afraid to admit that I don't know something, because I felt like, oh, all of these guys are like so technical. If I say that I don't know something, they might not give me the job. They might not give me this task. They might not promote me. But that's actually not true at all. The moment you start being more honest, that's when they actually can understand what are your strengths, what are your growth areas, and they can help you grow in those areas. So it's super important to actually ask questions, as many as you can. Like someone, like everybody says, right? No question is a stupid question. And that's how I actually started my career too. I was like, in my first class in my master's program, it was a master's program, right? So they expect you to actually have some kind of fundamentals when you're doing a master's program. And my first question was, what is a firewall? I had a lot of heads turned towards me as to how could you ask that question? But no, that was not the case. People actually helped me later, giving me some resources, references, saying firewalls are important because of this. This is what a firewall is. And they started explaining like to a 5-year-old kid as to why firewall is important. And that's how you develop connections too. I know I'm throwing a lot of information here, but all I'm trying to say is don't afraid to ask questions, and yes, get ready to constantly evolve, which is awesome, by the way.
Well, I mean, this field is just that. It's constantly evolving and
Mhm.
changing. So, I mean, honestly, you're not the typical software developer. You don't look the part. So, as a young woman of color in this space, which I can only imagine surrounded by your male counterparts, how have you learned to navigate being a minority in these types of spaces?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so if I actually think about it, when I started my career, fortunately, I didn't see or experience that much of a minority when I first started my career. But at some point, there was, of course, especially I feel like this is what I've started seeing in security. Like these days, we have a lot of women, which is awesome in security. But back then, at least when I started, there wasn't a lot of women in the room. And for some reason, it was almost like understood that when you see a woman in cybersecurity, it's almost like she doesn't have all the fundamentals that are required to perform the job, for some reason. But I experienced that. I'll be super honest. I did experience that, which was really hard. But at the same time, I felt like that is the moment where I've realized that I've worked so hard to get to where I was, and I've spent so many hours, I've put in so much blood to actually get there. And it's so important that the other person understands that you have the right mindset, you have the right knowledge, and you are capable of doing that task. So that's when I started voicing my opinion even more. Even sometimes when I was not asked about it, I used to still share my opinions because sometimes they used to be so valuable that it kind of changed the way we were thinking as a team. So I think that kind of helped me get that importance within the team. And I know it's sad that we have to take that extra step to do that, but at the same time, it is what it is. And if we can add that extra step, or if we can step up a little bit, I think it's going to help us because people started seeing more women in security, which is awesome. But at the same time, I'll also tell you this: when I first moved to this country is new, the language is new, is different. I wouldn't say new because English is never my native language. So everything was new. And the fact that I was getting into a super technical field compared to what I was doing in India, it was even more challenging. But I think what I've learned from that is just being more confident and putting that effort is super super important. Especially that has worked wonders for me, because I'll also tell you this. So that was my second day in masters. It was this class, hacking C programs, and I don't think I can forget this ever. So I was actually super pumped up, excited, and I sat in the room and the professor started teaching. Everybody around me started asking questions, and the professor was like, "Great question, let's dive deeper." But I was sitting in a corner, and all of it was Greek and Latin to me because I did not have that background. And I was so like, my confidence took such a big hit. I got so emotional. I went back to my room and I was like, what should I do? And that's when I felt like, like my family had spent so much money and time in actually sending me here. And I told all my friends in India that, you know what, I'm actually going to be a security engineer at one point. And now I can't give up after my second day. So that's when I decided, you know what, I'll put in the extra effort. I'll put in those hours. I'll see where it takes me. Worst case, I won't be able to make it, and that's fine. And that's when I'll tell you this, Mary, I have put so much effort into it. It was almost like I picked up a book from library. I started from page one, The moment I never understood a word, I used to Google that, read about it, write my understanding in my book. And that's actually how I've learned security. That's actually how I've learned my fundamentals. So I can definitely understand it's going to be a challenging thing, especially when you're a minority in a group. But at the same time, the passion that you're going to have, the effort that you're going to put, and the dedication that you're going to show is going to take you where you want to be. And it's super, super important that you voice your opinion when you're in a group. Share your opinion. Don't feel like you're a minority. You're no more a minority if you already have the knowledge that's required. So that's just my opinion.
That is it. I couldn't set this up better. Like I said, I tell all of my apprentices the same thing, especially those that are transitioning, and it's about effort, it's about passion.
Yeah.
And I point them out and I said, if you run across a concept that you don't understand, you need to dig deeper and dive deeper on that particular concept so you can get an understanding of what it means. And I find that especially transitioning professionals that we work with, the majority of whom are in our apprenticeship program, it's more so they're hung up on what they think cybersecurity is, or what you pointed out earlier. What I'm not technical, so my thought process has always been I can teach someone to be technical, I can teach someone to be polished professionally. I can't teach passion. Either
Right.
you want it or you don't,
Mhm.
right? And you have to give and put forth as much effort as you want if you want this, and then it shows. A lot of people get into this profession for the wrong reason. They get into it because they see the dollars
Yeah.
and the money that you can make in the space. And that's not what's going to take you far if you're not passionate about it. So, but there is still a way. I tell my individuals that are in healthcare, I said, well, healthcare security is a thing, and the biggest hurdle to a lot of cybersecurity issues is the lack of cybersecurity professionals understanding the business. I said, you come in knowing the business, and
Mhm.
so that makes you a better candidate because you're just adding the viewpoint, or you're looking at it under the glasses of a cybersecurity professional, which 100% it is needed in the space, because you work for a software company, right? And you're developing software, but security teams that are at a hospital, security teams that are looking at in different areas. If you have the business knowledge, it's definitely puts you ahead of the game. So
Yeah.
don't forget, if you have any questions out there on YouTube or out here with us locally, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll be more than welcome. I'm sorry, more than happy to answer those questions. The next question that I would say, as it relates to your own personal journey, and we've talked through it, what would you say is the most useful tool in your arsenal when climbing the corporate ladder? You've moved a lot of places, and you're ambitious, and so you keep going up. So, what's the the best tool that you could say that you have in your arsenal?
I think it's a great question. I love that. Um, Honestly, like personally, what has worked for me is I think if I have to put it in a few words, just embracing the ambiguity. Because I'll tell you why. When I first started my career, when I was on my first job, when I was given a first task that was technical, I was scared to death. I was like, I had no idea what that task was. And I didn't know if I would be able to accomplish it. And I had so many demons started talking in my mind saying, hey, you know what? What if I don't do it? What if I don't do it at the quality they're expecting? What if they actually would figure out that I don't have a lot of technical knowledge? And I had all these thoughts in my mind. I was scared to death. And I was talking to my mentor one day. And the best part was I had a mentor. So I was just talking to him, and he said, you know what? Let's try this out. You actually go to your team tomorrow and say, hey, I'm given my first task. I'm super excited to work on it, but I want someone to actually provide me some guidance. And let's see what happens. Because, anyways, you won't be able to execute it today. So let's try it out. And I think that's one of the best advices I've ever gotten from a person. The next day, I went to my team meeting and I said, hey guys, I have this first task and I need some guidance. They were actually waiting for me to reach out. And they were so glad that I asked, and I got so much help. And that's when I felt like, you know what? There's going to be ambiguity for sure. You're not going to escape from it. It's just how you deal with it, how you embrace it. And I'll also give you something some from my experience at Amazon. So when I was with Amazon, obviously everybody was so talented, and there was this principal security engineer who had like 20, 30 years of experience. When I was talking to him, one day I asked him, like, hey, his name is Bradley. And I was like, hey, Bradley, how do you know everything? Like, how can you have answers to everything? Like, how much effort should I actually put to actually be able to answer like you, be able to work like you? And this is what he said. He said half of the tasks that he would usually get, he doesn't know how to solve them, or he doesn't have answers. And what he would do is he would actually trust his thought process. He would find the right person who is actually an expert in that area. He would go talk to him, take that information, digest, apply his own thought process, and then deliver the task. That's what like that actually caught my attention, because if a principal security engineer at a company like Amazon is facing ambiguity in his day-to-day role, I for sure going to face that ambiguity every day. And I don't think I've ever had a day without any ambiguity in my role. And the best part that you could do is just embrace it, work with it, because that will actually push you up the ladder. And I'll also give you an example, because my brother, who's a younger brother, he's still in India. So he's actually trying to get into security as well. And he just did his first internship. So I called him one day and I was like, hey, how is it going? And then he said, it's actually pretty nice. There's not a lot of work here since I'm an intern. I'm just doing my courses. So I asked him, so do the full-time employees working there have a lot of work? So he said, yeah, they seem like really busy. I feel like sometimes they might need some additional help. Then I asked him, then why don't you volunteer for it? Just go ask them if you can help. He was like, oh my God, no, I don't think I can do it, because what if they actually give me a task? I don't know how to solve it. I don't have the experience. And I said, that's how you learn it. Just go volunteer, say, I don't know anything, but I'm willing to help. I'm sure at least you're going to get at least one task. And the next week, he said, I actually have a bunch of tasks now. And I did tell them that I don't know any of this, but they still gave me. And that's awesome. That's how you actually grow in your career. And that's how I grew, because that actually promoted me. That helped me get another opportunity, a better opportunity. And that's how I actually came to Adobe all the way, just embracing the ambiguity. So I don't think I can stress this enough for anyone who's getting into security. Ambiguity, you're going to have it every day. We just have to embrace it. So,
Okay. Well, that's great advice. We did have a question
mhm.
come up in the Q&A. It said, thank you for sharing your great advice. One of my first cybersecurity interviews was with someone who was not nice and started asking technical questions, even though the position was an entry level SOC or position. Have you ever experienced unfriendly interviews? And if so, how would you handle the situation?
Sure. I actually had one in my experience, because I think that's a good question too. Because when I was with PwC, I wanted to change roles. So I interviewed for this one consulting company who said the role was technical. And I prepared really well for the technical interview, but the questions were completely different, completely, they were not relevant at all to what the role was. And it was almost like I was being questioned on compliance and stuff like that when I was actually applying for AppSec, which was a little weird because I obviously didn't have experience, but at the same time, I was not in a position to even, fact check that this is actually not relevant. I thought maybe it's relevant, and I didn't know. And again, my confidence took hit, but that's not the case. And a lot of time, there could be two reasons here, right? One is a few companies ask you a lot of these seemingly irrelevant questions, but they still tie to cybersecurity just to kind of understand the breadth of knowledge you have within security. and to assess what would be the right position for you, especially when they have multiple teams, multiple roles. For example, when I was interviewing with Amazon, they also had questions on penetration testing side of things, because I did have experience to see where I would fit better. Since I had, like, my interview was really well on threat modeling side, I was given security architecture engineering role versus penetration testing, but I was questioned in both areas. Sometimes companies do that in security, and like Mary mentioned, there are so many roles that are still not filled and they're still looking for skilled professionals. That could be one reason, but the other reason is they genuinely don't know what they're asking. And situations like that, if you have an understanding of what it could be, you answer it. If not, you would just tell them that, hey, this, I never worked on this, I don't have that background or experience in that area. I'm more experienced in this, so I'd be more than happy to answer in those areas. And at the end of it, if they feel like you're not a good fit, maybe they're not a good fit for you, because they don't know what they're asking. So it's actually a red flag for you that, you might not have a good career there. So who knows? So yeah, so there's two ways of taking it, basically.
And I would add a third there. Sometimes people are just jerks, right? But you have to understand interview fatigue as well for hiring managers. Hiring managers, you put an entry level cybersecurity job out there, they're getting hundreds and hundreds of interviews, right? And so they have to figure out a way to screen out individuals in a short span of time, because it is their time. They're taking their time to try to fill a role in their team, which is, why I share with you guys that a lot of these entry level roles are not necessarily advertised like a regular role would be, just mainly because there's so many people wanting to be there. So, there are some not nice people. There are some, like I said, the hiring manager can get fatigued, the recruiters can get fatigued. There are multiple ways, and then
Mhm.
she's right in as much as it's like sometimes it's just that they're don't know what they're asking, don't know what they're talking about. But when you come across these types of situations where you're not feeling the love, for lack of a better term, from that individual, that again is a red flag in regards to whether or not you can work for that person. Because just as much as it's an interview for you, for them to interview you, you should be interviewing them as well. And if the person comes off as unfriendly during the interview, that's a clue that that person may not be the type of person that you want to work for, especially if it's your direct boss. Like I said, I've been in this space for 30 some odd years. You know, I've had interviews on the gamut, friendly, not so friendly. I've actually had a lie detector test. Going into the FBI, that wasn't a friendly interview. It wasn't meant to be, but it's just where you are from a career perspective, and those types of things tend to show, and culture tends to show. And I would say get your hit list of questions to ask the interviewer as well when you're going through that. I mean, don't just shrink,
Mhm.
right? Just because you feel uncomfortable or insecure, you ask those questions as well. So you're with Adobe for the past 5 months or so. I'm assuming you have an end goal. What would you say at this particular point where you are in your career, and if you can think about what's next, where do you want to go
Mhm.
next?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently a mid-level product security professional, I would say. So I'm definitely willing to take more responsibility, get into that senior role, deal with more complex stuff, because I do want to be able to dive deep into security, but at the same time, look at other areas as well, just to kind of get that breadth so that you understand how it works in the bigger picture. But at the same time, I at some point want to experience the managerial side of things as well. I know that it has a people element, which I like, but at the same time, unless and until I actually try it, I don't know if it's going to work for me. So yeah, I definitely want to try managerial side of things as well. And yeah, I mean, I do have a wonderful team, so I know they would be willing to support my career. So yeah, I mean, I'm super excited to see what future holds for me.
Yeah, and so when you're ready to move from individual contributor to people leader, the Mike Lead Communicators course will be for you because that's a challenge,
Yeah,
right? A lot of individuals that go because you become less hands-on,
true.
less technical, and it becomes more about your team and delivery and motivation and things like that. So that's what we've created the Mike Lead Communicators course for because it is a challenge going from
Yeah,
hands on, it's all about me to a technical until it's all about my team,
yeah,
right? And being able to motivate others and that transition. But that's great. I mean, if you see that it's try it, right? Because a lot of times individuals that are ICs, they they some people say, "Oh, I don't want to be a people leader." Some people say they want to be a people leader. There are a lot of people leaders out there that probably should just be high level ICs. That at least me speaking from my own personal experience.
hmm,
So that's good. That's good that you actually wanted to be a people leader. At least give it a shot. That's good to hear. Let's give it a
yeah.
shot. So um, I was looking on the YouTube to see if there was any questions. Any more questions from the crowd? Any? Okay. Well, I will continue on. I mean, I have to stop. I'm trying to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. So, I don't know how much you know about minorities in cybersecurity and the things that we're doing here, as it relates to not only workforce development and being able to bring individuals into the cybersecurity space. And you mentioned again your 4 or 5 months at Adobe. Things have been weird, as far as the job market's concerned. How I would say, how did you land that role? They you said they came after you though. It wasn't something that you applied for, or I mean, because there's a lot of I get a lot of folks saying, "Oh, Mary, there's, a lot of the younger, there's ghost roles out there. That's not a real role, or they're not really hiring, or yeah." And I tell them, by the time it gets to a LinkedIn or Indeed or something like that, it's been out there for a longer period of time than you may think, and they may have other individuals in the pipeline. So how did that interview go? Is it, multiple layers of interviews? Was it a technical interview? Can you describe that process since you're fresh into the company?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it was basically that I saw this position on LinkedIn and I thought, okay, this is a good fit for me. So I actually applied for a completely different position on Adobe, and they thought that I would be a good match for this role. And so they approached me. And yeah, so I completely agree with you, Mary. These days, it's been a real challenge to kind of find that right job, especially with whatever's going on the financial side of things in the country, and especially with the security jobs not having enough skilled professionals and stuff like that. So I could definitely relate to that. So at least when it comes to my interview, I definitely had technical. So I'd say this to everyone: whenever you're interviewing for a security role, regardless of it being technical or not, you are going to have technical questions to some extent. But I think the best part of security industry is you don't have to have a lot of expertise in any of these areas. You just need to get your fundamentals right, and that you get basically using these resources that you have at your hand. You don't have to pay for these, super expensive certifications or anything. All you have to do is just go to Cybrary or go to YouTube and just watch these free videos, try to understand, try to read books. And that fundamentals you're going to have is actually going to help you land on a role. Because even with Adobe, or I've interviewed with other companies as well after Amazon, and I will tell you this, even though it's a mid-level role, I still had basic questions because companies are having a hard time finding skillful people for these security jobs because a lot of times they are having candidates where they say, oh, I have 10 years experience or 15 years of experience, but they're not able to answer these fundamental questions, which, like you mentioned, right, it's going to be a hiring fatigue for the companies as well. So as long as you actually answer the fundamentals right and you get the questions right, you are actually in their eyes, like you are in the radar of them. So you want to get your fundamentals right. And that's what happened to me as well. I had multiple rounds of interviews, roughly about four, and all of them were technical. Just one of them with the hiring manager was a little behavioral, but four technical rounds in which they tested my security fundamentals. Since I'm a threat modeling engineer, so they tested my threat modeling fundamentals. And in recent times, I've started seeing this trend, new trend, where they also test security engineers if they understand code or if they are able to write code, at least in some areas of security, for example, product security, or where you interact with developers. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because when you actually know how to write code, you would be able to talk effectively with your developers. You would be their friend because you understand, you have that empathy for them, versus you absolutely have no idea how to code or understand code. Then it's hard for you to develop that relationship with them because everything is theoretical at that point, which is why I had a coding round as well. But again, that was very basic. They don't expect you to be like, developer. It's more like, can you understand code? Can you write some basic code? Can you like type some code is what they're looking for. So that's what I had as well. So yeah, security fundamentals, multiple interviews, threat modeling stuff, and coding. So that was it.
Well, that's good, because with the FBI, I think I had 10 phases, 10 took 6 months.
Oh,
Uh,
really? Wow. I mean, it's FBI, so it makes sense, I think.
no, it's fine. I mean, even with some corporate roles, I mean, because you hear complaints with younger professionals about the number of rounds of interviews, but when individuals come to me and they say that, I'm like, that's what I grew up on. That's normal. I've had full day interviews,
Yeah.
half day interviews. It's like hours and hours in order for you, and ultimately to understand that they're really it's personality contest. They're seeing whether or not you fit the actual culture of
Yeah.
the organization, and so there is no reason to be offended by the numbers of interviews that you're going through, and especially when you're going. I was a senior director level, so it's like, oh yeah, that's going to be a long time, right? It could very well take 3 to 6 months to land that particular role. So understanding, professionally speaking, that what you guys are seeing is normal,
Yeah.
really is normal. I mean, I've heard. Go ahead, sweetie. I'm sorry.
No, no,
You
go
were
ahead.
going to say
Finish
something.
your thought, please. Yeah, I'll add to it later.
I can go on and on. I don't they're sick of listening to me anyway. It's okay.
Oh. Yeah, I was just saying that you're absolutely right. I'd also add this another element to it. If you actually think about it, if you just have one or two rounds of interviews, it's hard for a candidate to understand the culture, not just for the company. You want to be able to work for a good manager, good company, good culture, and you want to be able to assess that. And it's hard if you just have like one or two interviews because candidates hardly get any time to ask any questions. It's only like 5 or 10 minutes at the end, but imagine you are going through multiple rounds and you have multiple people coming in, different people all the time. You actually get to see, maybe one person is faking it, but not everybody can fake it. So you'll be able to get at least an understanding of how the culture is, how they're interacting, what kind of roles do they have. And especially when you have a senior engineer on the interview, you would be able to see to what depth the senior engineer is actually trying to get to. So you'll be able to assess to some extent what level of knowledge would they be having and stuff like that, and basically make your decision based off of that. So it's actually good to have multiple rounds of interviews. So it's almost like multiple opportunities for you to assess the company as well. So
That's exactly right. Well, I don't have any more questions. I don't see any questions out there on YouTube. There are no questions in the Q&A or the chat. I will give you guys 30 seconds to ask any questions. Otherwise, we can call it an evening, a Friday the 13th type of evening. I don't know what you guys plan on doing tonight, but be safe.
Ah,
Be
definitely.
safe, be safe out there. I really, really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, taking the time to talk to the aspires. I think it's really important to bring on individuals that are in different areas, right, of cybersecurity. And if you go back on all of our content, you'll see that there, especially for this year, we've had individuals that are came on that shared with you
Mhm.
every little thing that they've done in the profession. Some going the traditional technical route, some not. So it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate you coming on to be on the mic with us today. And everybody else, we will be at this again. What is today? I just said it's the 13th, right? So I will see you guys on the 27th of September for our next session. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. The feeling is mutual. So glad we had this conversation. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, be safe and we'll talk again in a couple of weeks. Have a